Hello and welcome to Atlanta Film and TV's Featured Artist Conversation. I am Mandisa Johnson, and today we are having a conversation with Bryan Tan. Bryan is an Atlanta-based writer, director, and founder of Lucidity Pictures. Hi, Bryan. How are you today?
Hi, Mandy. So I'm really good. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. So we gave you a brief introduction, but could you share with us about who you are and what you do in the Atlanta film and TV community?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I am a writer director, and I think that kind of is a very broad thing to say as a filmmaker. So it's like, well, what else is behind that? Well, I've been working in the Atlanta film scene, I guess you could say, for about the last 10 years. I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, actually, and that's where I got my film and television degree, and it's really where I got to get started. I had wanted to be a filmmaker since I was maybe in seventh grade or so, and I was like won a science fair, and with the proceeds of the science fair, we had a gift card to Fry's Electronics, and I got like $100, camera, which was before even cell phones had a camera in them. It was like, not even as good quality as that, but it just kind of really opened up the whole world to me, of being able to create that way. So aside from being a writer director, I've just generally worked in the film industry here in many of the different departments. So my kind of philosophy has been very much kind of what can we build from the ground up. I've not like tried so much to try to just I'm not a hype person. I want to do good work. I want to make good relationships with people and have a small team and work really well and try to know the craft really well. So we've worked on really just kind of building up a lot of the skills from the ground up and doing as good as we can and trying to be responsible with how we use our resources so that we'll scale well over time.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. As I read a little bit about you on your website, I just wanted you to like expand to let our readers and viewers know. So, growing up, did your parents recognize your love of the arts? And if so, how did they nourish your gift to facilitate growth? I know you mentioned science. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, there's several things I can say about it. I mean, the biggest thing that I can say of gratitude that I have is that my dad just really let me do it. Really, because my dad, he's an IT person. He works in computers and everything, and he would have been just perfectly happy if I was like, yeah, I'm going to go into computer science as well. And there was always something in me that was like, no, I really want to create things and tell stories and things. And that was always there, even when I was before I really found filmmaking explicitly, it was kind of there. But, instead of him kind of pushing back on me and saying, no, you need to do this, it's going to be a way more secure kind of thing, he recognized that that was in me and really let me pursue this career and has supported me in many ways. Even if he doesn't quite understand what we're doing all the time, it's like he just gave me that space. And my mom also in much the same way, like has always encouraged me, and she has always been a painter on the side. She worked as a graphic designer before there was Photoshop by hand, moving in images and realigning them by hand with an X-Acto blade and things. So there's always, I guess that's where I got my artistic side from, was from my mom. But then I'm just really grateful that they supported me even when they didn't necessarily understand everything that went into being a filmmaker.
yeah, that seems to be the story for a lot of people. A lot of people's parents don't really understand. And I mean,
Yeah.
if you're not really working in the film world, it is kind of hard to understand. So, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. So, can you take us on your journey of how you started to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I got to say a little bit about it. I kind of started really just making movies with my friends the way a lot of filmmakers begin. And going to film school, when you're making movies in high school, you kind of often are like, well, you're kind of the Steven Spielberg of your school. Everyone knows you as the movie guy. And then you go to, say, an art school, and, that's kind of everyone's experience of their place. And you're like, okay, I'm not special. Like, what? There are other people like this that have these abilities too. So then at that point, you start to realize how much this is a collaborative thing and everything. And so I've been really blessed to have made a lot of good friends and relationships right when I was a student that have carried over all the way to the present, just working with other filmmakers as we kind of have moved forward slowly. And I think what we've really tried to do is just maximize the quality that we could do in our short films and then going into our first feature films, with the minimal resources that we have, and trying to think about it from the ground up of saying, well, okay, well, we know we have this really interesting location. What can we build around that? What can we build around the things that we have? And then coming to Atlanta, I think the thing that was really missing for us when we were film students was really relationships with actors and really knowing people in front of the camera as well. So I felt very fortunate to get to know actors and upcoming talent, I would say, in the city here, and really start to just to get to dream and kind of see them in roles and imagine what they could be, and then start saying, I'm going to write a story for these folks that are now my friends. They're not just people that I know. Getting to write roles for them and kind of, so even in that way, working from a what we have perspective and being able to tailor things to people's strengths and things. So it's been so fun to just kind of see the film community in Atlanta grow over time, and how excited people are about film here is just fantastic.
Yes, it is. Thank you for sharing your journey. I love to hear where how people started and where they are today. Um, so we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to Atlanta Film and TV's Featured Artists Conversation. I am your host, Mandisa Johnson. Today, we are having a conversation with Atlanta based writer and director and founder of Lucidity Pictures, Bryan Tan. You talk to us about Lucidity Pictures and the films you produce.
Yeah. So Lucidity Pictures is really my production company, as it were, and I've just used that as my LLC to kind of conduct film work here in town as well. And it's been a name I guess we've kind of been growing into. At first it's just like, well, it's just my company, whatever. But then it being like, no, this is what I've done, and it deserves to be at the front of the logo at the beginning of the films that you're making. But yeah, to tell you a little bit about the films we've actually done, I would say in general, I've tried to make films that they're not just vibes. That's been very important to me. That they're not just a feeling. They should be about something to me. I've tried to make them to connect to real world things, but not in a direct way, not in a propagandistic way, but in a way that it would connect emotionally with people. So one of my earlier short films that I did was called The Emissary, and it was a story about um oh, how would I summarize it? It's a woman travels as a basically a ambassador to a foreign planet where people had left the Earth, hundreds of years before, and she tries to reconnect with these people who she knows are her ancestors that they've left. And it's kind of a mystery in that sense if you don't know why all these things happened, but it's obviously the science fiction story. And it was something where I ended up building a spaceship set actually in my parents' basement. I was just 24 at the time. Um, and so really just kind of diving into production design, learning how to do those things, how to work with sets, and then yeah, getting to write that role for a friend of mine, Viviana Chavez, and learn a lot about that whole process, of doing really science fiction from the ground up. I got to learn a ton from it. It was a really fun project. And then from that, going into my first feature film, which is now out on streaming. It's on Vudu, Fandango Home, and some other platforms, called She Watches Blindly. And this was a psychological drama thriller about a young mother who believes she can read minds, but it's not a gift. It's actually an illness. It's actually destroying her life. So when people think about reading minds, they think, oh, it's like a superpower. It's something where you can manipulate people. But I thought, well, what if no, it's not like that. What if you just are subjected to people's thoughts? So you know what people are thinking about you all the time. You know all these things, and it could paralyze you. It could make you feel completely very cynical about human nature and things. So this character, she finds herself in a extremely kind of difficult time where her life is kind of falling apart. She has this infant and things, and she's got the emotions of the infant completely, basically doubling and multiplying everything that she's going through. And then this mysterious doctor character appears in the story. You don't really know who he is, and there's this kind of mystery of understanding what's going on there. and piecing together her life. Can this all come back together? What are the costs going to be of doing that? So that was this first feature we did. We shot it right in the middle of the pandemic with a small crew of just about 8 of us. And yeah, just we premiered at the Atlanta Film Festival last year. And yeah, I've just been really grateful to get to learn about the distribution side of filmmaking and have it out there now for streaming for people to see.
Wow, yeah, you sent that one to me. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it after everything you just told me. So
Oh, I'd love that. Please, thank you.
yeah, I've watched it, but now that I have a little bit more of an understanding, that's how I do films. Like when I like read up more on it, I have like a better understanding, and I'll go back and like, okay, I understand where the director was coming from. So thank you for sharing that. What is one thing no one knows about you? For example, do you have a hidden talent that no one knows about?
Oh, well, I don't know if no one knows this, but one thing I really love to do on the side is just play piano, and I play a little bit of guitar too. The guitar is a bit more secret maybe. But I would never claim to be any good at those instruments, but it is really I've found music to be just a wonderful side hobby. With film, it's so complicated. It's so reliant on so many things coming together. It's like having a wedding every single day. And yet, with an instrument, it's just you and the instrument. And it's just you learning and working slowly and getting in contact with the music of it. So that I've found like a really rewarding kind of side hobby for many years.
Wow, that's cool. I don't Yeah, I used to play the violin, but I wasn't any good at it.
Oh well, I don't think I'm any good either. I try not to play for people. If you put me in front of a piano, sometimes I go, okay, I played too long. Maybe just play 2 songs. Don't start practicing. In front of people.
Wow. So if I could travel back in time and speak to 18-year-old Bryan and tell him about all the wonderful things he would become, what would you least likely believe to be true?
Oh well, yeah. I think when you're 18 years old, you want you want to have immediate success. You want the world to be like right now everything's here for you. Everyone can see your talents right when you're at this nascent phase, like you're just really starting to discover things. You want that success to happen to you right then. And I would just tell my 18-year-old your 18-year-old self, it's like you're gonna just keep learning, and it's like you have talent and that's clear, but just let yourself keep learning. Like you don't have to feel like this all has to happen for you right now. And all the things that you do one step at a time are all going to be worth it. And actually, if someone gave you everything that you wanted right now, you'd probably stop learning. And that would be really less helpful for you than just going through the process and continuing to build relationships, continuing to build skills, continuing to just learn more about the world. I never want to I don't want to ever stop learning really and stop kind of seeing the world in different ways. So I would just encourage my younger self to do that and to know that that's going to be worth it.
Okay. So this maybe kind of ties into the this last question. You answered it very well, by the way. So what is a piece of advice you would have for someone
Oh,
coming out of high school looking to pursue a career in filmmaking or becoming a director?
yeah, yeah, I could speak to that a little bit more specifically too, because I did maybe answer it in a general sense. Yeah, I think it's really important for people to just fall in love with the actual physical process of it. And there's a lot of technical stuff in filmmaking that can be intimidating. But I would really encourage people to jump into it because there's a lot of pressure really to automate really everything in the process, whether it's through AI or whether it's through these different things, or just to hire things out. And if you approach these things in the mindset of, well, I don't know about this, so I have to hire someone, then you really won't know the specifics of what their decisions are and things. And if you're going to be a director, you want to understand every aspect of what you're doing. So, and you have to start somewhere. So you might not be able to be, 18 and be like, well, I'm going to direct now. But if you just start learning about the very specific things in filmmaking, it's going to help you over time, whether it's working with the camera, Whether you're someone who's coming more from the stage background and working with actors, it's like, well, that's an advantage. You know about actors and being in front of the camera, or whether it's being an editor or being a production designer. Those are all really useful things. And I think people sometimes can be afraid to step out of their comfort zone. They maybe know one of those fields really well, but they're like, well, I don't know about this other thing, so I need other people to step in for me. And of course, it is ultimately a collaborative thing, and you will be sharing the load at the entire time that you're making a film. And yet, it's still really good for people to know as much as they can, as much as they have the ability to learn to keep doing that into different fields so that they can be a good leader to those people and know what decisions are happening. Because what can also happen is people will um, they will have to just accept the advice of people without really knowing what is going on within that, and that makes them able to be exploited, or things can cost more. I do think this is part of the reason budgets have expanded so much is people don't really know why things are being spent well. So it goes back to being a responsible, being a good steward of the resources that we're ultimately asking for from investors and people, is that we want to be responsible people who are going to make that a good investment for people. We want to make sure that it's spent well, and that's going to come from knowing very well what everything is for, and what's worth spending and what's not worth spending.
Thank you for sharing that. And as you were talking, I thought of another question. So I'm going to ask you this. Would
Sure.
you advise anybody? I know you went to film school, but would you advise people to go to film school? I'm asking this because before I did my master's program in entertainment business, I didn't really think I needed it, but now I'm grateful that I did it because I feel like I learned a lot. It was online, but it was a lot of real world learning. So I just wanted to hear your take on um, what your thoughts are with somebody going to film school versus somebody not going to film school.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy for people to come down like one side or another. Some people will be like, "Yeah, don't go to film school; it's a waste of time." I don't like when people say that either. For me, it's like the difficult thing is that education, it's always up to us whether we go to school, whether we can afford to do that or not. Like, you have to be in charge of your education ultimately. So I think there are people that go to film school and they waste their opportunity that when they're there to use it well, and that's a problem. But it's like it can also, so it's like someone, I wouldn't tell someone they need to go to film school because they could be really motivated and not have resources to be able to afford that. So I wouldn't say that's going to stop them if they're really convinced and are an autodidact. But it can be extremely helpful. I mean, what film school can make for people is a space where you can fail without the consequences of that. Trying to be a professional, trying to. I mean, when I was a student, there are definitely some projects that like they literally ended in tears. Where it's like we tried to have people come out for a shoot or something, and it's like we didn't schedule things right. We didn't really get firm enough commitments from crew, and then we try to film and we don't have anyone there, and it's like that's like what a horrible thing to happen. But when you're a student, that's the perfect time to have that. It's the perfect time to make mistakes like that. So sometimes students, they just do the assignment, and if you're motivated about filmmaking, it's like, well, use every assignment you get to make a film, like to go as far as you can and enjoy it and put yourself out there with it, because a school project is a really safe environment to fail like that. So that's what it's really great for, is getting that space. And I would say the best candidate for film school is someone who doesn't really know where to start. Like, if you're someone and you've kind of been to the PA Academy and you actually know people working in film and you know some production companies and they're like, yeah, we'll get you on as a PA, you can come help our camera department or something like that, then maybe you don't need to go to film school. But if you just don't know anything, if you don't know anyone in the industry and you're kind of an introvert, you're not really someone who's just sending emails, cold emails, and if that's just not been successful for you to do that sort of thing, then definitely go to film school and it'll get you on the path.
Wow, you had some teachable moments there. Thank you. So, do you have any gems? GEM stands for Great Educational Moments with Movers and Shakers. You would like to share for our readers and viewers?
So what would be any examples of those gems, or I'm trying to think about how I would answer.
Um, I'm trying to think of a gem that someone shared. Well, one that I always share is, and that I learned and that I share it, is be willing and open to learning. Um, just because you have an education or just because you have a background in something doesn't mean that you can't learn anymore. Just doesn't mean that learning stops there. So it's just like a piece of advice for people that you have, like that you use on your journey as a filmmaker. If that makes
Yeah, okay. Yes, definitely. And I completely agree with yours as well. I feel like I've been saying the same thing a lot of ways. Is like keep learning for
Yes,
sure.
yes, you have.
Um, I would say, in the spirit of that, I would say keep writing.
Mm,
I would say another draft of the screenplay, it will never hurt you. You will never regret another draft. People, they get excited about their project. They write one draft or two drafts, and they're like, "All right, we're making it." And then you get into the edit, and you're like, "Oh, well, now I have to rewrite this movie in editing."
mm,
So if you, it's just it's really painful at first to keep writing and learning how to do multiple drafts of something, but that's really where something becomes good. Really, it becomes good when you commit to take the time and the discipline to refine something in that process and um to learn to see those mistakes before they end up being mistakes you have to fix in the editing later. So that's what I would say. I would also say in this in on that note, it's like if it's not working on the page, it probably won't work on the screen.
mm,
So it's again, it's like make sure you solve those problems on the in the screenplay. It's like if something's not making sense to someone,
mm.
you there's always an escape valve. You're like, well, I'm a visual person, it'll come through when I show them what I'm thinking. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe, but don't take the chance. Make sure you at least write what you're thinking visually so that people will understand it. And if you're not able to explain that, it will it's means it's probably not going to end up there. So that's what I would say is it's like it's good to be humble about that. Let the screenplay teach you. Let people's reaction to the screenplay teach you, and that will go really far.
That's good. The keep writing thing kind of ties into what I was saying. Be willing, open, and learn. Because I have an MFA in creative writing, but it's not perfect still. Like sometimes I will go back. I know you said something about rewriting. I will put it down for a minute or close my laptop up, come back, and I'll be like, "What? I have like one too many comments." Like that. That has always been my thing, just getting comment happy. And like the rewrites on screenplays when I did my program, I hated the rewrites, but it made sense. The story that I was trying to write made sense. The rewrites, because that was the hardest program that I've ever done, was creative writing, relearning grammar errors and all that good stuff. But the rewrites is what really got me. I can't tell you how many times I rewrote a 10 page, not a 10-page screenplay. Um, yeah, but thank you
Oh
for
yeah.
sharing that. Do you have anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, I think that's it really. I just would, love anyone who wants to be able to check out the film. I also have a Substack called Lucid Themes where I write about things related to film, Atlanta film, and just kind of maybe critique about artistic processes in general, thinking how to really think about being an artist kind of in our world. I think there's a lot of advice that's maybe counterproductive that people give. So I kind of have a sort of side project where I write about some of those thoughts as well. But mainly, I'd love for people to see the film She Watches Blindly.
Thank you. So how can people connect with you?
Yeah, I guess I jumped the gun there. That would be how it would be to go follow my Substack Lucid Themes. I also have a YouTube channel where all my old short films are available. It's just my name, Bryan. And you could probably easily find the short film The Emissary that way. I have the Instagram is action_tan. And then yeah, that's probably those are probably most of the places.
Well, thank you so much for sharing about you and your journey. And thank you for joining us. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Atlanta Film and TV and subscribe to our website at atlantafilmandtv.com. Have a great one.
Thanks.